What a surprise.
Yeah,
Republicans say the White House's opening offer to resolve this so-called fiscal crisis lacks any real compromise. And House Speaker John Boehner is leading an attack on the lack of progress.
No, there's a stalemate. Well, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it was not a serious proposal. And so right now we're almost nowhere.
Almost nowhere. How about that? Shira Toeplitz is a staff writer for Roll Call, joins us live today. Shira, the president promised a balanced plan, a balanced approach. He must have said it 1,000 times. Then he finally puts out his offer, and it's actually a plan that doubles the tax hikes that he campaigned on, and it adds about $150 billion more, not less, to the deficit in new spending. To Republicans, was that kind of the equivalent of Lucy and the football, and there they are laying flat on their backs?
Yeah, absolutely. Republicans scoffed at this first foray from the White House. They even laughed at it. They thought it was ridiculous. But for the White House, this really was their first attempt. It was the first specific plan we've seen since the election being put out there. And it was, frankly, a wish list. John Boehner acknowledged as much in his comments this week. It was what the White House would like to see. That this is, if we do get a deal before Christmas, it will probably look nothing like this.
But look, instead of rolling up his sleeves and actually doing the hard work of meeting with members of Congress, I mean, even if it takes day after day and tens of thousands of hours, if there is that much time, the president doesn't do that. He skips town, he heads back on the campaign trail, gives speeches about it. All of this, his time is running out. How frustrating is that to some of the folks on Capitol Hill who really do want to sit down and work with him?
Well, I think it's frustrating to some members of Congress, perhaps members in his own party more than anything. But if you look at this president's record with Congress, he doesn't do that traditionally. He's not the guy inviting everyone up from Capitol Hill to the White House for beers and nuts in the Oval Office or anything to have discussions like that. It's not how the president has worked. What he's done is send envoys such as Timothy Geithner, who's been taking the lead on a lot of these negotiations, to Capitol Hill instead. Right. He's often sent the vice president as well. It just hasn't been the president's style his entire first term.
Geithner has absolutely no experience on legislation, so you send him up there?
Yeah, you do send him up here. And there's a great profile of Geithner as kind of the lead negotiator in the Washington Post this week. And the reason that Geithner is taking the lead is because he's kind of a little bit neutral in some ways. Obviously, he knows fiscal issues quite well. But beyond that, House Republicans seemed a little more willing to talk with him than perhaps other members of the president's administration.
Well, he certainly knows not paying taxes. Look, Mitch McConnell is offering a plan now to cut the biggest driver of the debt, entitlements, and specifically he's saying this: higher Medicare premiums for the wealthy, increasing eligibility age, and slowing the cost of living for Social Security. In exchange, he says, look, we Republicans will agree to more tax revenue from high-income earners. Are there Democrats there, Shira, who would support that?
There are some Democrats who would be willing to look at entitlement reforms. The White House has mentioned entitlement cuts and some of the plans they've put forward. The problem there is really the United States Senate and Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, who has been unequivocal in his statements that he does not want to touch Social Security. So I think that's going to be a real sticking point once we get to, in a few weeks from now, if there is some deal that John Boehner and the president have negotiated, really getting through that other chamber and back to the president's desk.
Yeah, the president had promised that the deal he would put forward would have spending cuts. I mean, he talked about that ad nauseum. Yet his proposal comes out, no spending cuts. He's offering, yes, some vague savings, not cuts, but savings to be found somewhere, somehow in the future in Medicare and other health programs. But there's no plan, there's no time frame. Sure, there's no idea put forth on how to do it. Is that being greeted with suspicion, if not disbelief?
Well, the entire deal or the presentation that the White House put forth this week was greeted with, as I mentioned earlier, laughing, and House Republicans really scoffed at it. So it was really the entire package. But you mentioned the $400 billion and a vague Medicare cuts down the pike. Yes, I think what the president might have been trying to do is to force Republicans' hands into naming their own cuts, what they would like to see cut, because it's a political sticking points. No one and many voters don't want to see certain programs being cut, and that's a more challenging thing to figure out what you're going to cut. So you wanted to put that responsibility in the hands of congressional Republicans.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. Shira Toeplitz, good to see you.